Here we go! Oh my God! Ow!
We're going to the powder bars. Yeah, this time of the damn year, man, I gotta take advantage of the high water so I can get out there and get the damn logs and come on back in. Well, let's load it up, man. I'll get up here and you hand it to me.
Let's do it.
For years, millions of viewers watched Shelby Stanga on the History Channel's Axemen, laughing at his wild adventures and cheering for the legendary Swamp Man. But behind that tough exterior and infectious smile was hiding a secret so devastating that it would change everything. Today, we're finally uncovering the heartbreaking truth about what really happened to Shelby Stanga, and why his story is more tragic than anyone could have imagined. Before we dive into this emotional journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because stories like this one deserve to be heard. Now, let's begin. Picture this: a young boy growing up in the vibrant streets of New Orleans, Louisiana. Born on January 17, 1960, Shelby Stanga came into this world during a time when life was already challenging. But for little Shelby, the struggles started from day one. He never knew his father, and his mother had to raise him all by herself in a world that wasn't always kind to single mothers. Can you imagine what that must have been like for a young child? Growing up without a father figure, watching other kids with their dads, wondering why his family was different. But Shelby's mother did everything she could to give him a good life, and Louisiana became more than just his home. It became his heart and soul. When Shelby was just 16 years old, barely old enough to drive, he made a decision that would shape his entire future. Most kids his age were thinking about video games and hanging out with friends, but Shelby was different. He needed to help his family, and he found his calling in the most unexpected place, the dangerous, muddy world of logging. At 16, while other teenagers were complaining about homework, Shelby was already working like a grown man. He fell in love with the wild, untamed swamps and forests of Louisiana. The smell of the mud, and the sound of the water lapping against the trees, the thrill of finding something valuable hidden beneath the murky surface. This became his world. But here's where Shelby's story gets really interesting. He wasn't just any ordinary logger. Shelby discovered something that most people would never even think about. Deep in the Louisiana swamps, buried under years and years of mud and water, were ancient logs that had been sitting there for decades, sometimes even centuries. These weren't just any pieces of wood. They were treasure. You see, back in the 1800s and early 1900s, Louisiana was a major logging area. Thousands and thousands of trees were cut down and sent floating down the rivers to be made into houses and furniture. But not all of those logs made it to their destination. Many of them sank to the bottom of the swamps, where they've been sitting ever since, slowly absorbing minerals from the mud and turning the most beautiful colors you've ever seen: deep reds, bright blues, rich purples, and golden yellows. Shelby figured out that these sunken logs were worth a fortune to furniture makers who wanted something truly special and unique. But getting to them? That was the dangerous part. Shelby would put on over 100 pounds of lead weights, just like a deep-sea diver, and walk along the bottom of the swamp, feeling around in the thick mud with his feet, trying to find these hidden treasures. Think about how terrifying that must be. You're walking on the bottom of a dark, murky swamp. You can barely see anything, and you never know what dangerous creatures might be lurking nearby. Shelby would dig 6 to 8 feet down into the soft mud, all while holding his breath and hoping his air tube didn't get caught on a branch and torn out of his mouth. One mistake could mean death. But Shelby wasn't afraid. In fact, he loved every minute of it. The danger, the adventure, the possibility of finding something amazing. It was like a treasure hunt that never ended. And this is what made him so special when television producers discovered him. In the year 2000, Shelby's unique skills caught the attention of TV producers. His first appearance was on a show called Man vs. Wild, and immediately, viewers were captivated by this wild, funny, genuine man who seemed to fear absolutely nothing. His personality was magnetic, He had this way of making people laugh while doing the most dangerous things imaginable. That's when the History Channel came calling. In 2008, they offered Shelby a chance to be part of a brand new show called Axemen, which would follow different logging crews around the country as they risked their lives to harvest timber. For Shelby, this was a dream come true. Not only could he continue doing what he loved, but now the whole world would get to see the amazing work he was doing in the Louisiana swamps. And boy, did the world fall in love with Shelby Stanga. With his signature camouflage boots, his wild hair, and his famous shout of "Here we go," Shelby became the heart and soul of Axemen. Viewers couldn't get enough of his underwater adventures, his stories about finding sunken ships and Civil War artifacts, and his incredible tales of surviving in the wilderness. But here's what made Shelby truly special. He was completely real. While other reality TV stars were acting and following scripts, Shelby was just being himself. Every dangerous dive, every close call with a venomous snake, every moment of triumph when he pulled a beautiful ancient log from the swamp, it was all genuine. Fans could tell that this wasn't an act, and that's why they loved him so much. For 10 seasons and 163 episodes, Shelby entertained millions of viewers. His success was so huge that the History Channel gave him 3 spin-off shows, including The Legend of Shelby the Swamp Man. He became one of the most recognizable faces on television, and it seemed like nothing could stop him. But then, everything changed. After a decade of success, Shelby made an announcement that broke the hearts of fans everywhere. He was leaving Axemen. The man who had become synonymous with the show, the person viewers tuned in specifically to watch, was walking away from it all. At first, people thought maybe he was sick, or maybe he was just tired after so many years of dangerous work. But the truth was much more heartbreaking than anyone realized. Shelby revealed that the producers of the show had broken their promises to him. They hadn't paid him what they had agreed to pay him, and after years of risking his life for their cameras, he felt betrayed and used. Can you imagine how that must have felt? Here was a man who had given everything to make their show successful, and they had let him down when it came to keeping their word. So Shelby did what Shelby always did. He stood up for himself. He walked away from the bright lights and the fame and went back to what he had always done best, working alone in the swamps, pulling up logs, and living his life on his own terms. But the world felt emptier without him. The producers of Axemen quickly realized what a terrible mistake they had made. Without Shelby, the show just wasn't the same. Ratings dropped, fans complained, and it became clear that Shelby Stanga wasn't just a cast member. He was the heart of the entire show. So in 2018, they came crawling back to him, offering him his own spin-off show to try to win him back. The Return of Shelby the Swamp Man aired in 2018, and fans were overjoyed to see their favorite logger back on their screens. It seemed like a happy ending. Shelby was back doing what he loved, and viewers were thrilled to follow his adventures once again. But then, something terrible happened that would shake the entire Axemen family to its core. The show Axemen had always been dangerous. Everyone knew that. Logging is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, and the show never tried to hide that fact. But what fans didn't expect was just how many of their beloved cast members would pay the ultimate price. The first tragedy struck Jimmy Smith, the owner of SNS Aqua Logging Company. Jimmy was born on May 3, 1956, and he had been battling cancer for a long time. On November 1, 2012, at the age of 55, Jimmy lost his fight with the disease. His death hit the Axemen family hard because Jimmy wasn't just a cast member. He was like a father figure to many of the younger loggers on the show. Jimmy had been known for living life exactly the way he wanted to live it. He didn't worry about what other people thought of him, and while that sometimes made him enemies, it also made him someone that viewers respected and admired. The History Channel dedicated the opening episode of Season 6 to Jimmy's memory, and fans around the world mourned the loss of a true original. But Jimmy's death was just the beginning of the heartbreak. On September 7, 2013, another beloved cast member was taken from the Axemen family in the most shocking way possible. William Bart Colantuono, who was born in 1959, died in a helicopter crash while transporting logs in Lynn County. He was only 54 years old. What made this tragedy even more devastating was that William was an experienced Navy pilot with an incredible record of safety and skill. He had received numerous awards for his exceptional helicopter logging abilities, and everyone who knew him considered him one of the best pilots in the business. For someone with his level of experience to die in a crash seemed impossible to believe. Witnesses to the crash said something strange happened. They reported that William had successfully dropped off his load of logs before the helicopter went down, and that he had somehow become separated from the aircraft before it crashed into the forest. This led to speculation that William knew something was wrong and tried to save himself, but couldn't escape in time. Some fans became convinced that William's death wasn't really an accident. They pushed for authorities to investigate it as a possible murder, believing that someone might have sabotaged his helicopter. However, after a thorough investigation, authorities concluded that there was nothing suspicious about the crash, and it was ruled an accident. But the questions and doubts lingered in the minds of many who loved and respected William. Then, just when the Axemen family thought they had experienced enough tragedy, another devastating blow struck. Gabe Rygaard, who was just 45 years old, died in a car accident outside his hometown. Gabe had been driving his white Ford Bronco when he crashed head-on into another vehicle. While the other passengers were treated and released from the hospital, Gabe died at the scene, even though he had been wearing his seatbelt. Gabe's death was particularly heartbreaking because he was the operations manager of Rygaard Logging Company, a business that had been in his family for generations. He and his brother had taken over the company from their father, and Gabe was known as the heart and soul of the operation. He was the one who kept everything running smoothly, who made sure all the employees had work, and who solved problems when things got difficult. Even though Gabe had only appeared in one season of Axemen, he had made such an impact that everyone considered him part of the family. His father and brother were devastated by his loss, not just because they loved him, but because they didn't know how they would keep the family business going without him. Gabe had been the glue that held everything together. The final tragedy that rocked the Axemen world was the disappearance and death of Van Huffman. Van was working with the Paypak, Alaska crew when he vanished during a logging operation in the wilderness. Search teams looked for him desperately, but when they finally found his body on Sioux Island, it was clear that he had died alone in the dangerous Alaskan wilderness. Van's death was particularly haunting because it showed viewers just how dangerous and unforgiving the logging world could be. One moment you're doing your job, and the next moment you're lost in the wilderness, fighting for your life with no help in sight. All of these tragedies took a terrible toll on everyone connected to Axemen. Fans were heartbroken, cast members were traumatized, and critics began to question whether the show was too dangerous to continue. Some people accused the producers of caring more about dramatic television than the safety of their cast members. Environmental groups criticized the show for celebrating dangerous practices that they said gave the logging industry a bad reputation. But through it all, Shelby Stanga kept doing what he had always done, working in the swamps, pulling up logs, and living his life authentically. However, the tragedies around him had clearly taken their toll. In interviews, you could see the sadness in his eyes when he talked about his fallen friends and colleagues. And then came Shelby's own personal tragedy. In 2014, Shelby was arrested for trespassing and theft. The charges stemmed from an incident where he had cut down a cypress tree that belonged to his neighbors. What made this particularly devastating was that the tree had been state property since 1963, which meant Shelby had unknowingly committed a felony. For a man who had built his entire reputation on his knowledge of the Louisiana swamps and his respect for the natural world, being arrested for stealing a tree was like a dagger to the heart. Shelby spent a day in jail and was charged with felony theft, though he never spoke publicly about the incident, leaving fans to wonder what really happened and how it affected him emotionally. This arrest represented so much more than just a legal problem for Shelby. It was a symbol of how his world was falling apart. The show that had made him famous was ending, his friends were dying, and now he was facing criminal charges for doing something that, in his mind, probably seemed like just another day of work. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Shelby's story isn't any single tragedy. It's the way he's been forgotten by the television world that once celebrated him. After all the ratings he brought in, after all the joy he brought to millions of viewers, after all the risks he took to make great television, Shelby has been largely abandoned by the industry that once needed him so desperately. Today, Shelby Stanga is still alive, and he's still working in the Louisiana swamps. He married a woman named Donna in the early 2000s, and together they've built a quiet, simple life near Lake Pontchartrain. They have 2 children, but they've chosen to keep their family out of the spotlight, protecting their kids from the fame and attention that once surrounded their father. Despite having a net worth of around $2 million from his television career, Shelby still chooses to live simply. Instead of a fancy mansion, he often sleeps in a hammock by the water. Instead of expensive cars, he prefers his boat. Instead of designer clothes, he still wears his signature camouflage gear. The most expensive thing he owns might be his iPhone, because at heart, Shelby has never been about the money or the fame. He's still out there, diving into those dark, dangerous waters, still pulling up ancient logs, still living the life he's always lived. The only difference is that now, instead of millions of people watching his every move, he's working in relative obscurity, largely forgotten by the world that once couldn't get enough of him. And that might be the most tragic part of all. Shelby Stanga gave everything he had to entertain us. He risked his life. He shared his world with us. He made us laugh and cheer and worry about his safety. He was genuine in a world full of fake reality TV stars, and he never asked for anything more than a fair shake and honest pay for his work. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the ratings dropped, the television world moved on without him. There's been no big comeback, no new series, no reunion special. Just a man in his 60s, still working in the swamps, still living the life he's always lived, but doing it without the recognition and appreciation he deserves. The real tragedy of Shelby Stanga isn't that he got arrested, or that his show ended, or even that so many of his friends died. The real tragedy is that we live in a world that can forget someone so quickly, that can take a man who brought so much joy and authenticity to our lives and just move on. Shelby Stanga deserved better from the television industry, and he deserved better from us as fans. He gave us years of entertainment, and in return, he should have gotten respect, fair treatment, and lasting appreciation. Instead, he got broken promises, legal troubles, and the heartbreak of watching his friends die while his own contributions were forgotten. But here's the thing about Shelby Stanga. He's tougher than any tragedy that life can throw at him. He survived growing up without a father. He survived decades of dangerous work in deadly swamps. He survived the betrayal of television producers. He survived legal troubles, and he survived the loss of friends and colleagues. And he's still out there, still working, still living life on his own terms. Maybe that's the real lesson of Shelby's story. Maybe the tragedy isn't what happened to him, but what we lost when we stopped paying attention. We lost one of the most genuine, entertaining, and inspiring people who ever appeared on television. We lost a man who showed us that it's possible to work hard, stay true to yourself, and find joy in the simple things in life. Shelby Stanga may have disappeared from our television screens, but his legacy lives on. Somewhere in the Louisiana swamps, there's still a man in camouflage gear diving to the bottom of murky water, feeling around in the mud for ancient treasures, and living proof that some people never lose their authenticity, no matter what the world throws at them. And maybe, just maybe, that's not a tragedy at all. Maybe it's exactly the ending that a man like Shelby Stanga would choose, back where it all started, doing what he loves, surrounded by the wild beauty of Louisiana, living life exactly the way he wants to live it. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please hit that like button to show some love for Shelby Stanga and all the cast members of Axemen who are no longer with us. Share this video with your friends and family so they can learn about the real man behind the legend. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell, because stories like this one, stories about real people who lived authentic lives, these are the stories that matter most. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.